Good morning, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for being here on this beautiful day. My name is Dina Mallory. I didn't have to look at my notes to remember that. Sorry. Usually use notes. My name is Dina Mallory. I'm Director of Programs here at Bennington Museum and currently serving as co-acting Director of Programs. And our curator, Jamie Franklin, is right up here up front. He's going to say hi to you in a moment as well. But I just wanted to thank you all for being here. This is a really exciting day in the middle of what has been a really exciting year in Bennington. This year we had our first ever Pride Parade. And the wonderful Lisa Carton is here somewhere. There she is. And just a dynamo organizing all of that and setting into motion something that will be continuing to grow in Bennington. And I will just plug an event here on October 11th, which is National Coming Out Day. In the evening, please check the museum's Facebook page and the Queer Connect's Facebook page for more details about that. We can't wait to see you all there. And in 2019, this museum, Bennington Museum, has its first ever exhibition focused exclusively on the experiences of Vermonters of color. First ever. I want to applaud, and at the same time, this museum opened in 1928. And there have been Vermonters of color before there was a Vermont. That is not even counting the native peoples that lived here before European settlement. We're learning more and more about the earliest Vermonters of color, and it's really exciting and important, and I'm really excited to be a part of this important moment at this museum. I think this is the first time I've actually gotten a little emotional introducing the program, but it's big. It is time to start telling the stories of our whole community, because that is the way that we make this community whole. And that is actually all I'm going to say, because we're not here to listen to me. I'm going to introduce Jamie Franklin, who's going to talk a little bit more about the Visible in Vermont exhibition, and then we'll get to why we're really here. Thank you.
I too will be very brief. I often get emotional, so expect it. I just want to welcome everybody. Mia approached me a few months ago and said, we have this exhibit. We're trying to travel it to various venues across the state of Vermont, 2-week slots. And I said, well, we already have our exhibition schedule set up, but as I thought about it, we had an exhibit down where the current exhibit is, Visible in Vermont. And I said, we're having a tough time pulling it together. We can probably put it off. And so we worked together. Thank you for approaching us, the museum. And really, as Dina said, the museum is working hard to do a better job of telling the whole story of Vermont. And so this is just an opportunity that we couldn't turn down. But it wasn't about us, and it was, I think the important part about this exhibit is that it is people of color telling their own stories. Mia approached me, and then I worked closely with Sean to realize the installation here at the museum, and I'm really happy with how it came together. But again, I think most importantly, it's allowing us to hear stories and educating us. It's about this community trying to understand what it's like from another person's perspective. And so with that, I'll hand over to Shahan so we can hear those perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Shahan Moliere, and I work with the Roots Social Justice Center and co-coordinator of the I Am Vermont 2 project. Information is downstairs. I'd like to thank you all for coming to this historical event. I'd like to thank the Vermont Council on the Humanities for their grant. I'd like to thank the Bennington Museum for generously printing and then donating the collection. And I'd like to thank your former representative, Kaya Morris, whom I approached a year ago about this project. And the world, including her world, has changed. And this is for me a full circle moment. I especially like to thank the panelists for sharing their stories, for speaking their truth, and for their contributions to their communities. I especially want to appreciate their vulnerability and am honoring it. Before we begin, and the panelists will introduce themselves and tell a brief story, we don't have necessarily a universal definition or definitions. So for this purposes, we are working on the definitions. Racism is a system of advantage based on race. Racist act or behavior supports racism. Racist is someone who has an advantage based on race. Microaggression is a term used for brief and commonplace daily verbal behavior or environmental indignities, whether they're intentional or not, and towards any group, particularly culturally marginalized group. They are cumulative, they cause racial stress, and we have the statistics, whether medical, whether housing, whether education, to prove it. So once again, I want to thank you all for being here, and the panelists will speak briefly, have some questions that they will answer, and then we'll open it up for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. My name is Mia Schultz. I've lived here in Bennington for almost 5 years. I came from Arizona by way of Southern California. And when I moved here, I did not know what I would be encountering. I encountered, and my kids encountered, heartbreaking racism within the schools. And we've been working with people ever since. So for this event to be put together is, again, full circle. And it's an honor to have this room filled. It means that people care about this issue, and they want to hear what we have to say. So, thank you all for coming.
So Mia, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Oh, I'm a mother. That's first. I'm a mother of 2 kids, one in middle school, one in high school. I work from home, which makes it easier to be a mother. And I work in this community with Rights and Democracy and several groups with the schools. I'm working with the schools to help our children all be recognized and feel and see examples of themselves in their curriculum, and to be noticed by their teachers and administrators.
So tell us about the microaggression.
one of the microaggressions that I have received as a parent, and you will see in the exhibit down below, has been dismissal of my feelings regarding my children's experience in the school and regarding their safety. I'm often seen as emotional when I do not feel that my white counterparents are seen as emotional. And I want what all parents want, and that is for my kids to receive the best education in a safe environment.
So at that time, how did you feel?
I felt, sometimes it made me feel like I was wrong, like I didn't know what I was talking about. I felt like I was being second guessed. But I know for a fact that I was not. But it makes you feel a little bit invisible. It makes you feel demeaned and less than.
And what did you need at that time?
Support. And I was able to find some support in other parts of Vermont, and other groups that I attend. But there was also a feeling of isolation, and many, many times that people do not experience what we experience. So, but I needed support from my everybody. It didn't matter if there were people of color or not.
What barriers, if any, do you think you have put up because of microaggressions?
I know that I trust barriers. I'm not as friendly as I used to be because I feel like I have to be on guard. I have to watch my words carefully as not to be perceived as one way or another. So mostly I put up a barrier of not being approachable.
And what would you propose to your community that they could make your life one where you are visible, where your experiences are validated and your contributions to the community are valued?
Number one is to believe me. Believe me when I say that there are problems that need to be addressed, and then take action and not just lip service. We have a lot of things that happen where people check the box to make it look and give the appearance that things are being changed, and they are not. So actual action.
Good morning. Thank you for coming. My name is Mary Garish. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, which had a very diverse population. I am Lakota, and my grandmother was from the Standing Rock area and was transported under cover of night to Detroit to be a household servant so that she would not wind up at the boarding school. As I was growing up, there was blatant racism all over Detroit, and I'm sure the rest of the nation. You know, whites only allowed signs in numerous restaurants, drinking fountains, whatever. And I can remember saying to my mom, "Can I get a drink of water there?" Even though everybody, I don't have really dark skin, but people would do things like say, "How come you have that black hair?" Now, I know today you wouldn't believe it, but it's because of the gray. But I used to have very black hair. And people would call me an Indian giver. And I couldn't understand what the insult was there, because giving I thought was a good thing. And that was before I understood, or my parents understood, or probably most of society understood microaggressions. So I wasn't quite clear on how that goes. I moved to Vermont about 10 years ago. Was really happy to be coming to a place that I felt was much more sensitive and liberal in terms of racial issues and racial equity. I was surprised to find that really wasn't true. And that was a disappointment to me. And I was distressed to watch what my neighbors on Pleasant Street go through with police. And even here, there was a microaggression I'm a social activist, and in an organization that is all about social justice, and somebody was talking about having a meeting, and they said, yeah, we can have a powwow. And I said, what, you're having a powwow? And they said, no, a powwow means meeting. I go, no, a powwow doesn't mean meeting. So, anyway, that is sort of my story. I've lived through a lot of changes, and yet I can see that the microaggressions are very, very damaging to people and cause them to withdraw and want to be invisible in our community, and that disturbs me.
So the microaggression that you just mentioned, can you share how it made you feel at the time?
Yes. So at the time, I mean, when I was younger and I found out what Indian giver meant, I was like, that's stupid. We would never give a gift that we would take back. Why would that even happen? Then I found out it was because of the whole thing of the settlers buying Manhattan, or they thought they were, but you can't sell the land and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, you all know that story, I hope. If not, I'm over schools will teach it. But the way, recently, when somebody said that, I was really taken aback about the powwow thing, because they know that I actually do go to and have helped organize powwows. They know that I'm Lakota. They know how much powwows mean to me and what their significance is. So for them to continue to use that word, it was like, it made me feel like they weren't really, I wasn't like a whole person there. I was just a participant at the table, but I wasn't really participating because they weren't worried about what I felt. And that was shocking in that kind of an organization.
What did you need at that time?
At that time, what I needed was for people to say, oh my gosh, I'm really sorry. I don't know why that came out of my mouth. And I'm going to learn from this experience. And what happened was the person did say, oh, sorry. And everybody else at the table kind of looked down and looked awkward. But that was the extent of it. But a little bit of more support would have been nice.
Barriers because of microaggressions and racism?
One of the barriers, and this has to do with not only microaggressions that I've suffered, but blatant racism that my family and my dearest friends growing up in Detroit suffered, which was that I felt like, gee, I didn't really want to invest any emotional effort in this because it was insurmountable. I came to learn that if we work together, nothing is insurmountable. But that's how I felt through many years of my life. And recently, how I felt during that, I already told you, I felt like I was kind of invisible. So it gave me a better understanding of how a lot of my neighbors want to be invisible because they don't want to deal with that.
A message to the communities that will make your life good regardless of the experience and your contributions. Got your experience validated and your contributions valued.
I think that I would feel really proud of our community if we came together against any sort any sort, whether it's a microaggression that you don't know you're using and you say, I'm sorry, I'm learning, I won't do it again. Relative to racial equity, and if we all work together on that and actually feel uplifted by that instead of separated and at war with each other about, well, that's stupid that that person was offended because I didn't mean it that way. Whether it's stupid or not is not your problem. The fact is they were offended. So why would you want to continue saying that or engaging in that behavior if you're offending somebody? We are each human beings. We are each made with the same sacred breath. We need to respect each other's dignity, and that would be a wonderful community.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good morning, guys. How you doing? My name is Sean. Good morning. My name is Sean Pratt. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. I grew up, like I said, I grew up in Coney Island. In Coney Island, growing up in New York City, you know, you got all the things that you got down there. You got drugs, all those kind of things. I had to really, there was a lot of pressures put on me as a young kid, and I had to steer away from all of that. And I did successfully. And when I thought that once I went to college, that all of that would stop, right? So I'm leaving New York City, I'm leaving crime-infested area, thinking that if I come to college, come somewhere good, that everything will be fine. I come up to college, right? I go to Fulton Montgomery. I went to Fulton Montgomery Community College in Johnstown, New York. Wasn't really that big, but it was a lot of diversity there. Really not a lot of problems. Graduated from there in '93, and I came to Southern Vermont. I was actually playing basketball, and I was recruited to come to Southern Vermont. When I got here, I faced a lot of racism, but not knowing what it was, right? So I think a lot of times when we grow up in these rural areas, we don't get this, well, the racism is there, but it's way in, like, the higher ups have that power, right? So I wasn't really able to, I didn't really see racism in New York City. But when I specifically came up to Vermont and came to college at Southern Vermont, that's when I started to see it. And I was a little taken back because there was a lot of people that I trusted, and the people that I trusted ended up being the way I didn't want them to be. So they were already my friends, so I had to continue that relationship, not understanding that it was bad for me. I didn't know anything about any microaggressions, but I was definitely a target of a lot of those things.
So now that you know something about microaggressions, do you want to share one? Describe it.
Okay, the one microaggression that I can share that I had was, the most vivid one is when I went to go see one of the officials here in Bennington. And at the time, I didn't even know that it was a microaggression, right? She says to me, she's like, you know, Sean, you speak well. And I'm like, no, I took it I was like, oh, thank you. Like, I'm like, she just humiliated me. Like, but I didn't realize that. So I got home, right, and I went and I talked to me. I'm like, you know, she said I spoke well, right? She said, Sean, she just disrespected you. Like, you know you speak well. Why you gotta, but see, that's the thing. I'm second guessing myself because we talked about the second guessing. Right? So I'm second guessing myself. I know I can speak, right? But I felt like, why do I need validation from that person, right? I should already know that. I do know that. So that's what's kind of waking me up with the microaggressions.
Thank you for sharing your feeling, and what did you need at that time?
I just needed that lady to be just straight with me. That's all. I wasn't looking for any compliments or anything like that. My main thing was going in there and talking to her about, you know, what can we do to make things better. Like I said, but it, you know, when I found out, when I was told, you know, I felt stupid. I felt like, wow, I gotta catch these things. But the one good thing is I know it now, so I'm gonna just keep it with me.
Barriers. The barriers to keep it up because of
Isolation, not talking to people, just being distant, you know, and you guys know I'm not about no games, so you know I can tell you in 2 minutes and walk right away from you. So it put me in the spot where I'm looked at as this big bad guy, you know. So.
What would you like to share with the community to make your life better? Where you're visible, experienced, validated, and you're a valued member of the community.
There's a lot of people going through the same stuff that I'm going through. So I just want them to validate all of us because we're all in this together, right? All of us that's going through this, all of us people that, right, all of the meetings that we go to, you know, we all know these things. So I just want the people to know that, you know, we have to stick together and we have to be together so that, you know, we can get past all of this and heal from all the abuse that we've been getting.
Hi, my name is Iviana. I'm 15 years old, and I'm a sophomore at Mount Anthony Union High School. I moved here when I was 10 in 4th grade. I moved here from Florida. I didn't really know anything about racism or names that people called us or whatever. So, when I moved up here, I didn't really know how to handle it or what to do about it, because I kind of just left it alone. The microaggression that happened was I was called a nigger on the bus, and I didn't really I heard of the word before, but I didn't really understand the meaning of it. So when I told my mom about it, she told me what it was, and I felt discouraged. How could someone say that to someone else? I lost a lot of trust. I didn't hang out with a lot of people. I didn't talk to much people at school. I lost a lot of self-esteem because of the way I looked, because most people didn't like the way I looked. The barriers that I put up was mostly my self-esteem. I hated the way I looked because of what people said about me.
It's okay.
You're beautiful.
You got it.
I needed a lot of support, and I still do.
What would you like to share with your community?
I would like for people to know the history of the word and how upsetting it is to be called that, or how upsetting it is to be called anything, and to be so discouraged in the place that you live.
Use the water.
Also, for people to be taught in school that it's a bad word. No one wants to feel that way about themselves.
Thank you.
Hi. My name is Shamia Velasquez. I'm 16 and I was not in high school.
Can you all hear her?
No.
I'm here now. I grew up in Vermont. I lived here my whole life. And there's not a lot of diversity here, but there's like no diversity here actually. I went to Vermont because I was like the only black girl in the school. And no one like really knew what my race was. They just assumed I was like Mexican or Filipino. They never like actually asked me. And then like on the computer it says your race, it said like African American or whatever. It wasn't like really a set race because I didn't know. A microaggression I faced was in elementary school. There was this one girl who didn't know my name, so she was calling out her name. She was like, "Hey, little black girl." And I was kind of young, so I didn't really know. Like my mom was there, so she heard it too. And it kind of made me feel. Well, it made me feel like, why can't you just like come up to me and ask me, or like ask me what my name was, or yeah, why?
What did you need at that time?
I needed kind of just well, yes, I wanted her to come up to me and like apologize and then ask me what my name was. That never happened. Yeah. I wanted her to understand that you don't just like call out, someone's race, like you could go up to them and ask them.
What barriers have you put up?
Barriers. Well, when I was younger, I used to be like so like outgoing, and then as I got older, I kind of got quiet. I isolated myself, didn't really talk to anyone. I wasn't really like friends with anyone until like even when I came here, and a couple of other people that were nice to me. Yeah.
Share with the community.
I think what the community needs is like a better education in school. Like we have a whole month of Black history, and for like the past 5 years I've been learning about Christopher Columbus and the English settlers. It's pretty annoying. So I want to learn about my history, like my Black history, and also my Hispanic history too, not just Caucasian history.
Guys, let me just say, like, out of all of this right here, these two girls right here that got up here and did this right here, this is what it's about. For me, I don't really care about myself. You know what I'm saying? I care about myself, but I don't really care. They gotta come first. Now, these girls right here, right here, these two right here, this is what's going on in these schools out here. You know what I'm saying?
Please give the panelists another hand. They represent your community. They represent the pleasure and the pain. Take a deep breath, everybody. Let it out. That needs 2 more breaths. Take another. Let it out. One more time. Breathe in and slowly exhale. So now let's open up for discussions, and if you have a question you'd like to ask of a particular panelist that you wanted to address the questions to, please do. We'll pass you the mic.
People say, so this is kind of directed at all the panelists. I heard a few people say that what you needed at the time was support. And I'm wondering if you could be more specific about like what the support looked like, or how would you receive, what would, you know what I'm asking? Just what, I'm not sure how to be supportive.
What specifics?
Support meaning, I mean, we would like somebody to validate how we feel when we go and say something, you know, anybody. Whoever we're, you know, talking to, we just want to be validated in some kind of way. That's all we're asking.
Support to me means validation when I say that something happened, not to question whether or not I'm telling the truth. And then to be, when you're in situations where you see and you're now educated when I tell you that this is a microaggression, and you see somebody else do the same thing, to support that person and tell the other person, and not to be silent. Complicity is the worst.
I totally agree with everything that Ann and Sean said. And I would also like to add that relative to microaggressions and speaking up, the other important thing, I think, is that people tend to say, if you call it to their attention, if I see a friend of mine saying something, or somebody calls something to my attention that I've said, and I say, oh my God, I didn't realize, I'm sorry. Okay, being sorry is great, but you're not sorry if you keep doing it. Yep. So I would just add that.
For me, support is like understanding my feelings, like validating that I am a human being too, just like you. I don't like to be called names. I don't like to be treated. I don't like to be stared at. I am much as a human being as you are, and that doesn't discriminate me just because of my skin color.
Support for me comes from my family members, mostly my mom, because I'm a very sensitive person. So when like I say something mean, it tends to like get in my head, and I get down on myself, and then my mom just picks me back up, and she always tells me to take a breather and just let it go.
Support for me also means is that we all do our own work.
Yeah.
Support means that we practice cultural humility. Support means that when we self-educate, we do it through the lens of critical self-reflection. Support in that way means that you will then have the capacity and understanding your part in being socialized in racial hierarchy. So it's micro and macro. And what I would strongly suggest, because part of white supremacy culture is to help us. We don't want your help. We want you to work on your stuff. We want you to start your own healing. We all need healing. And being able to recognize how you participate in that dance. Stop dancing. And I'm a dancer. I said, stop dancing. Oh, I gotta create a whole new dance. Okay? Other.
Thank you. I want to thank all of the panelists for everything you said and the courage that you brought forward today. And I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about what that's like when you do start to speak up. Because these are things that happen so much, so frequently, they're embedded into the systems of our everyday lives, what happens when we go grocery shopping, what happens in our schools, what happens in our workplaces. And when you call that out, that extractive work, what that means to then be visible, if you've experienced repercussions for that, if you've experienced backlash for that, if you've experienced, how has our community responded when you've spoken your truth?
I feel like you asked that for me, but I'm sure it's for everybody. I know. We all do. My repercussions have been in terms of, I'm going to just call it out, the school district in particular, to silence me, to exclude me from meetings about equity when I was there from the beginning. Yeah. To exclude my contributions regarding, and my insight regarding safety issues when it comes to our children and the other things, the white supremacist culture that they are experiencing. So because I have spoken out, I have been silenced, and I have been pulled over by police. I don't know if the two are correlated, but one can assume. So yeah, speaking out takes a lot of courage. It takes resilience, but throughout history, we have examples of people who have endured so much so that we can be here today. So.
What has happened to me, I've been followed all over. They've been all over my nephew. Those are some of the things, and I gotta tell my family members, my nephew and his friends, I gotta tell all those guys, they gotta keep it down, and they gotta be cool, and that's what they do. They follow you around. They, say different things to other people, and it gets back to you. So little stuff that they try to poke at you and pick at you. So that's what happened to me.
It hasn't happened to me personally, what I'm about to say, but what bothers me and what I think is awful and what sort of typifies what we're talking about is that I have a couple of neighbors and I saw them being totally harassed inappropriately by law enforcement. And I saw things happening that I knew were wrong, and I went out and I videoed it, and my neighbor begged me not to do anything about it because it would only be worse. Yep. That's heartbreaking.
I've been fired. I've had my child be subjected to taunts from his peers because I spoke out. I spoke out at school and the situation got worse. I spoke out at jail, the situation got worse. I've spoken out, and in that conversation, the recipient, the person I was talking to, was changing the conversation, was changing the narrative while we were talking. This stuff is insidious. And what made me think is what's going on, that's the lens that you're looking through. That you call me scary, and I want to know how am I scary? My language, my voice. And then she finally was courageous enough to say, it's what I had to say. I'm dealing with that on many levels, and this is a woman who's wanting to work for racial equity in schools. Wants to work with me. So besides the fact that we know the propaganda of black people being scary, I mulled over that for 3 hours, and then when I brought it up again, she changed it. First she says, no, she meant powerful. I recalled the conversation. Then she says, oh, excuse me. I mix up, or I see them powerful and scary the same. I find that scary and dangerous. So when we talked about here, the panelists said, hear us. Because not only am I trying to communicate with you as I would in a normal discussion, but now I have to translate for you so that you will understand. I have to go through your lens so that I could be heard. That's tiresome. Thank you, great question.
Ms. Williams, first I want to say, that was criticism. Because in things like this, we need to feel that pain. And you gave office here, but she doesn't feel that pain. I appreciate that. Before I forget, we talked about microaggressions, you heard about a few. We have some examples here. A project to be done one day is for me to collect all the microaggressions that people have said on in the exhibit and list them. But we do have some here for you.
This question is for the students on the panel. Mia made a very good point earlier about how sometimes governments and administrators and schools just want to go through the motions of checking boxes. The first part of the question is, are you feeling that in your school, in your school system? And two, have you as students or anyone you know thought of activities or programs that the school could implement that would actually change minds and hearts rather than just checking boxes?
I would say that is definitely in the school system. All middle school, high school, elementary school, it's all there. I don't think there should be a program. I think it should be the students actually learning about how to deal with people that aren't the same skin color as them. How to deal with not saying those words, not saying stereotypes because of social media, stuff like that. But that it shouldn't be secluded into one program, that everybody in the school, including the teachers, should be included in all of this.
I can tell the story about the book. Your English teacher. So that's something I wonder.
In 8th grade, I was on the Glossenberry team for the middle school. I had this English teacher. Her name was Miss Williams. Ironic. She had us read this book called The Slave Dancer, which was totally fine with me. It's history, it's fine. She told the students that they could say the N-word in the classroom as they're reading, but that they couldn't say it outside of the classroom. That doesn't really do anything. They're still going to say it. If you allow them to say it in one environment, they're going to say it in the next environment, and the next environment, and the next environment, and then it's just all going to go around. So she allowed people to say the N-word, and behind me in the classes, I heard people giggling, like making noises, and I was like, not having it. So I didn't say anything, but the next day we went to class, and she had us go out into the hallway where the lockers were. She yelled at us to get down on the floor like next to each other, and to pretend that we were the slaves in the book. So someone refused to do it, and they got a detention for it. They didn't go to that detention. And I told my mother about it, and she went to the school. The school really didn't do anything at first. They just took me out of the class, and she made me read the textbook about Harriet Tubman. And I was not in the classroom at all. I had to sit in the hallway for 3 days. And then eventually my mom went to the school again and went off on them.
So I definitely do think that
Not me. That's my mother.
it's
That's my grandma.
like when they're teaching the curriculum when it comes to like Black History, they always do like a little checkbox because every time it's like Martin Luther King Day, you get like a colored paper, like don't leave a number, just color it in. It's pretty dumb. I do think that having a group of like students who care about their history and after school program would be good, but I think we should also learn it in school. But I know all students wouldn't be like, there would be students in the class who would just goof off the whole time, and it would just like affect the people who actually care about learning. So an after school program would be better for it.
And coming from an educator, because it's wonderful to ask students, coming from an educator, students are going to have a support group in school. They need to have support from the community. We very easily say, get together, and it's their problem, and not recognizing that they're a member of the community. We need to have that school environment welcomed. We need to have the teachers and staff trained. We need to look at equitable, racial and equitable studies, the coalition. Kaya is here, she's either. We are having various efforts, whether it's educational from the individual or educational from the community. We have a little bit more time for a few more questions.
Hi, my name is Lisa Thurston Flynn, and I've been living in Bennington since I was 4 years old. My mother moved here from Springfield, Vermont, so I was born in Vermont, in Springfield. I've been part of the school system here my whole life. I started at Bennell, where I'm working now, as kindergartner, and then we moved to Pownell. I've been the only person of color in my class throughout my entire education here. I graduated from Mount Anthony in 1981. What the girls have said, I am basically sitting here in tears, reliving what I lived through from the late 70s. I graduated in 81, so I went through a lot of what you said and repressed a lot of it because I just felt like it was never anything that anybody talked about during that time. You know, my mom was Caucasian. My dad wasn't really part of my life, so I grew up in, white Bennington with a white family. I had a stepdad who was white. Everybody thought I was adopted, but, my biological daughter of my mother, and so she didn't really know a lot to embrace my ethnicity, during my years growing up. It really took, and it's so ironic, back to Southern Vermont. Some of my first African American friends were Southern Vermont students that came to Bennington. And I connected by taking classes up there. And through a counselor there, she ended up getting me an application for Eastern Airlines, and I moved to New York City to become a flight attendant for 18 years. So it kind of got me out of this environment into an ethnic environment where I learned a lot about myself and a lot about ethnicity in general. And I lived in New York for almost 18 years. And then I moved back after 9/11. I had a son who was 2 years old at the time, and I decided to go to MCLA to become a teacher. During that time, I was working as a para when I got my teaching degree, I waited a year before I even got an interview. So we're kind of fast forwarding up to, okay, I was told, well, you made such a good teacher assistant. They didn't even consider, you know, giving me an interview. I had a master's degree in teaching. I had, you know, almost 5 years experience as a teacher's aide, but I didn't get an interview for a year. It actually took me getting involved with the school board and a state representative kind of stepped in behind the scenes. I got an interview the second year, several interviews within the district, and I did get hired at the school I was working at. But I felt like, you know, I could be really reflective and go on and on about some of the things that I experienced. And I'm looking forward, you know, I've been teaching now 7 years. So I feel some of the repercussions of what I've been through, but I push forward because I still feel some of the institutional racism through, you know, perhaps people not wanting their children in my class. But I feel like now the system is a lot more diverse than when I was in school. At least there are several children in my classroom or in the school and in this district who are, you know, interracial, and we have more teachers of color, a few. I was one of the first, actually, in the elementary school system in Bennington. And I did apply through the Teacher Diversity Scholarship, which was in 2007, around that year. I applied 3 times. And so, anyway, after that, they eliminated the program. So I just wanted to mention that because in order to get more diverse teachers in, they need to have programs like that to help people fund their education. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Legisberry, is there anything, a word or two that the panelists would like to say, and you can have?
I think I've said what I need to say. This is not just our work. It's everybody's work. And actually, I do the work every day, so maybe somebody could take up the slack.
Thanks, I totally agree. We all should take up the slack. And I guess what I'd like to say is that with the opening of this exhibit, in the reception that it's gotten, in all the folks who have had the courage to speak out, especially our students here, I'm hoping that what that means is that our community can actually enjoy and celebrate our diversity in the future, and that we can have happy days like we did with the Pride Parade about racial justice in the future.
I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank Sean, Mia, for putting this on. I'm just upset at the fact that, right, we can't really say what we want to say, right, until these kids speak, right? And then everybody has to feel some type of way, right? Everybody gets emotional with that when it hits our kids. So, you know, this is for white people. White people need to be accountable, right? Like, you got to do the work too, you know? So that's what I'm saying. That's my message.
I just want to thank you guys for letting me have this opportunity to speak to you all. And yeah.
Thank you guys also, because I'm really nervous, and you guys are all like, really, like, not making me nervous. And this is also like a great opportunity for me to speak up about my race and issues that I have.
I'd like once again to thank the panelists. I'd like to give an extra thanks to Mia. It would not have happened without And I'd also like to say for the folks of color that there is a People of Color Caucus. I'm part of the statewide committee, and we did not have a retreat this year. We are planning to have one for next year. In the meantime, we're looking for what we call geographical or local caucuses, and to be able to start to network and support each other. So once again, I'd like to thank everybody for being here. Give yourself an applause. Michael, the rest of you, thanks.
Well, I've all got you all in the room. I want to second Sean and just thank you all for being here for this really awesome and informative and touching panel discussion. I would like to invite you all back this afternoon at 2 o'clock. We have Curtis Reed Jr. is here from the Vermont Partnership for Fairness and Diversity, and he will be presenting a program on a vision for a multicultural future in Vermont, and the program that his organization is working towards. So please have another cup of coffee and another munchie. Please just don't take it out into the exhibits. Stay and talk and mingle. The VAE Art Bus is out front, and they, starting at 12 o'clock, are going to be doing some art activities. So you can go visit them and then come back and see us again at 2 o'clock today for another really interesting and important presentation in this room. Thank you all very much.